Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. I recently saw a video on the Let's Resin Facebook group in which they used water beads in resin for a really unusual effect. Lots of people were asking questions and wanting to know more, including me, so I thought why not just have a go myself, make a video and we can all learn together. We'll do some experiments and see what happens. So if that sounds like fun, stay tuned and enjoy the video.
For my experiments today, I decided to make coasters. I felt that coaster moulds would be just about the right shape and size to make it nice and easy. And especially with the large coaster mould from Let's Resin, they're really deep, and that would give me plenty of space for these coasters. My first job was to cover the surface of the coaster mould with a very thin layer of epoxy resin. It just needed to be enough to completely cover the surface, and so I didn't need much at all. And so here you can see me measuring out equal amounts of part A and part B of Let's Resin's epoxy resin, and it's measured by volume. Once measured, I mixed it thoroughly with my automatic mixer from Let's Resin, and then I also removed any bubbles with my bubble remover, also from Let's Resin. And if you haven't guessed already, today's video is a video for Let's Resin. The bubble remover is optional, of course. You don't have to have that. If you're new to resin and this is one of the first resin videos you've watched, don't be thinking you've got to have all these fancy tools. You really don't, but they do help if you want really clear resin. Anyway, back to the job. As you've already been told, I need to cover the base of my mould, and doing this does take quite a long time. I'm going to fast forward it. The reason it takes a long time is because you just need to add a little bit at a time and wait and see if any kind of patches appear, because what happens is if you're not using much, you do get like holes or patches appearing after a while, so you've got to keep your eye on it when you're not using much resin. Here are my water beads. I got these off Amazon, and I need to get these ready before I do anything else because it does take a little while to absorb the water. You don't need too many, they really do multiply in size, probably about 10 times their original size, so yeah, don't get carried away. They'll be overflowing out of the jar if you put too many in. It was a time-lapse opportunity I just couldn't resist. Unfortunately, I did kind of need to stop the time-lapse after a while, so we didn't quite get all the way there, but you can see them growing there, can't you? While the water beads were busy expanding, it was time to mix up and degas some more epoxy resin. Same one as yesterday, measured and mixed in just the same way, just more of it. Next, I poured my water beads into a sieve to drain away any excess water. I took a few of them at a time and rolled them onto a kitchen towel or paper towel, whatever you want to call them. They do kind of have a mind of their own and they do want to go everywhere. It's going to happen. Yeah, if you don't like a mess, this is not a job for you. So this is where my first experiment comes in. I wasn't sure if it would be best to put the beads in first and then add the resin on top, or to put the resin in first and add the beads on top. So I decided to make that a part of the experiment. For the first two, I added the beads to the mould and then added the resin. It's important not to add too much resin, because if you do and the resin goes too high up on the beads, you're not going to be able to get them out afterwards. So try to go for about a third of the way up the height of the beads. Now I've got to say, this was my least favourite way of doing it as far as the application goes, because I couldn't tell whether the whole surface was covered in resin because the beads were in the way, and I was worried that I'd miss a bit. So yeah, you kind of feel like you've got less control doing it this way. And it was also quite hard to see how much, whether I'd poured enough or not enough. So yeah, on this one, I think I added too much. I'm trying to remember. I'm remembering. I did have to scoop some out, and that's another problem. If the beads are already in there and you add too much resin, it's really hard to scoop it out because the beads are there and you end up having to scoop the beads out too. So yeah, it was not my favourite way of doing it, and I was looking forward to doing the next ones the other way around. And here's what I was talking about. I had to kind of scoop out the beads and the resin at the same time and then put the beads back in separately afterwards. It was just a real pain. So if you're going to do this, do be careful not to add too much resin. I was so busy worrying about not adding enough that I added too much. It's typical really, isn't it? And then it was time to do the other ones, but this time the other way around. Some of the resin is already in there, as you can see, because I made a mess, but that's okay, because that's all I was going to do anyway. All those 4 empty ones that you can see just need covering with a layer of epoxy, just like the first layer I did, which is already cured. And then I just added all the beads. Unfortunately, it wasn't quite enough. I didn't have enough beads to completely fill them, so 2 of them were half filled. So adding the resin and then the beads on top was definitely the easiest method, but that doesn't mean it was the best. We won't know until we demould these which was the most successful, so do bear that in mind. What I will say is there was a massive difference in the results between, the first 2 where I added the beads and then the resin, and then the others where I added the resin and then the beads. When all the beads were in place, I did have a very good close look at them all to check that none of the beads were going down too deeply into the resin. And with that bottom right one, I did use a pipette to take out some resin just because there was a little bit too much. So now it's about 6 hours later and the resin is still very tacky. I decided to have a go with the first 2. Well, actually they're not. I've turned the mould around. I know, I'm sorry if I've confused you. It's the opposite way around. These are the last 2 that I did. Anyway, what I wanted to do was take some beads out from the first 2, take all the beads out while the resin was still tacky, so I could add my mica powder and it would stick to the tacky resin. I felt that was the only way to do it in that way. Do you know what I mean? I wanted the chameleon powders to stick to the tacky resin, and the only way with epoxy is to, do it when it's partially cured to get that effect. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to remove the beads while the resin is still pliable and tacky, and it wasn't going very well, I've got to be honest. I think as I went on doing this, my technique got better. You've got to be very careful because it's very easy to break the bead. And once you've broken it, it breaks into little pieces and it's hard to get all the bits out. So the thing is to try and keep them whole. If you can keep them whole, it's actually quite an enjoyable process, if a little bit lengthy. Next, I'm going to be adding my chameleon powders, but I just wanted to give you a close-up look at what stage the resin was at. Do you see the micro brush pushed in left a dent? It's still very, very soft. So here you can see me adding my chameleon powders, which are from Let's Resin. I was just taking random colours and brushing them on. And I did the same for the one above it. And so that's how I did the first 2. But I didn't see the point in showing you both with all those, picking all those beads out. I thought it's best to just show you all of that just the once. Okay then, so the next day the resin was all fully cured and I went straight to get all those beads out, but it was very difficult, especially with the clear beads. Every time I thought I got them all, I didn't. There was, I kept finding clear beads still in there, and the ones that broke and left residue behind, I had to use my airbrush, not my airbrush, my air compressor to blow out all the little bits, and that helped quite a lot. If you don't have an air compressor, you could just get a straw and blow through it to just blow them out, but you will, oh look, there's another clear bead. You will find that there's just lots of bits in there that you'll blow them out and then they'll land in another hole. Honestly, it was, if it wasn't so annoying, it would have been funny. And at this point I was thinking, is it really worth it? Are people really going to want to do this when they see all the time and effort that's gone into it? Yeah, it's not quite as easy and straightforward as it looked in the video which inspired me. Anyway, in the end, you will find out whether I was happy with the results or not. But yeah, I don't want to spoil it for you. Let's just carry on. So I've got the mould back the right way around now to where we started. And it's time for the next step in the experiment. This time I'm going to use UV resin. I'm going to go the old-fashioned way for this. UV resin cured for just about 10 seconds until it's tacky, and then once again add the chameleon powders just like I did before. And so I got a soft brush and my Let's Resin UV resin and tried my best to brush it into all the nooks and crannies. When I felt like I'd done quite a thorough job with the UV resin, I cured it for about 10 to 15 seconds, as I've already mentioned. And let's see if it's tacky enough for the chameleon powders. And they seemed to be sticking, and that was a big relief. Let's fast forward a little bit. I tried to stick with pinks and golds for this pair. I thought that would look really nice. So yeah, as I just mentioned, I'm doing 3 pairs of coasters. That's the plan. And I'm going to do exactly the same as you've just seen on the one above. So when I'd finished adding the chameleon powder, I was able to have a really good close-up look to see if there was anywhere where the chameleon powder hadn't bonded, so that I would know where I'd missed with the UV resin. And there you can see it's right round the edge. I haven't got enough UV resin in there. So what I did was I got my UV resin back, added a bit more of the chameleon powder, and it was sorted. Not a problem. Right, the middle two with the UV resin and the chameleon powders are finished. Now it's time for the third idea. And I thought for this one I would use paint, acrylic paint to be precise. Yeah, let's see what happened here. Well, not a lot. Not a lot happened. The acrylic paint would not bond to the resin. Even though, in the past I've painted epoxy resin with acrylic paint with lovely results, and I was kind of disappointed. It was very old paint, to be fair. It might be something to do with the paint not being very good, but it just would not bond nicely. So I very, very quickly gave up with that idea. And so I thought, well, I've already messed it up. Why not try some alcohol ink? Let's see what alcohol ink does. So I had a go with that. And still, I could tell it was not a success. So I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to do exactly the same thing with that last one, just so that I've got a pair that's exactly the same. what's the point in doing that? So when I realised that the alcohol ink and the acrylic paint wasn't going to work, well, I just made the best of what I could, with that one. I covered it in the alcohol ink and moved on to the last one. And luckily I had another plan up my sleeve. I decided to take the mould outside and spray the last one with spray paints. I used some rose gold spray paint and some regular gold spray paint, and I actually did it on the one that I'd previously just ruined, just to see if it would help at all. Actually, they really remind me of empty honeycombs. What do you think? I think so, definitely. Right, okay, so they're all coloured and we're ready for the final step. And that is to add the last layer of epoxy resin. And because we're having an experiment, I thought we'd have a further experiment with the resin. I'm going to do half of them in black and half of them in white. As it turned out, I didn't quite have enough resin. It was quite deceptive. To look at it, you would have thought it didn't need much, but of course you're filling in all those holes. So I guessed wrongly with the amount of resin I needed and did need to go and make some more, but I didn't film that. Okay, it's the next day, the time we've all been waiting for to see if any of these have turned out okay. I knew that there was a high chance a lot of them would be rubbish, but let's see anyway. So these first two are the ones where I brushed the chameleon powder onto the tacky resin. I love the colours on this one, but you can see there's a lot of distortion in the middle. Can you see there? Yeah. So doing it on the tacky resin so the mica powder would stick didn't really work. I like the result. It's different. It looks a bit like frog spawn. But yeah, not really what I was going for. With this one, you can see the chameleon powder hasn't even really stuck to it very well at all. But you can see there's a massive difference between using the black resin and the white resin behind. So with the next ones, these were the ones where I used UV resin and then brushed on the chameleon powder. Another experiment I did with these, if you remember, is I put the resin in first and then poured the beads on top of the resin. And do you see what I see? Yep, lots of big bubbles trapped under each bead. Yeah, we'll see if it was the same for the second one. Yep, exactly the same thing has happened again. It must be something to do with pouring the beads on top of the resin. That's all I can think. And I'm kind of glad, because it means the experiment has, shown me the difference in doing the two different methods. Well, we'll see. Sorry, I'm giving it away now. You haven't seen the last one yet, have you? But anyway, I do like the results of that one and I like the colours. It's just a pity about the air bubbles. So this is the one that I spray painted. And look at that. Oh my word. I am in love with that one. And of course, these are the two where I added the beads into the mould and then put the resin on top. And do you remember me saying I didn't like doing it that way? But that's the way to do it. There is one bubble trap that I can see there. But other than that, the results are perfect. Now, don't hold your breath for this last one. This is the one that went completely wrong, but I thought might as well show you it anyway. Look at that. What a mess. Never mind, eh? The thing is, we've got one where we've learned so much. So in conclusion, from doing the experiment, I now know that if you put the beads into the mould and then the resin on top. That's the very best way to do it, and you're far less likely to get trapped air bubbles. And I also discovered that by using spray paint you get an absolutely amazing effect, and it's the easiest one to do as well. Oh, I can't stop looking at that. Isn't that good? So if I decide to do this again, I will do them all like that because I love the results. And in case you're worried about the spray paint affecting my mould, here's the mould after I washed it. It was fine. It needed a bit of a good rub with my washing up sponge, but other than that, no problem getting the spray paint off the silicone mould. So if you found the video inspiring or useful, or even if you enjoyed having a good laugh at my mistakes, please do give me a thumbs up because it helps the channel a lot. And you can subscribe if you'd like to as well, that's up to you. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye for now.